I think that's how a lot of Americans felt.
And you believe we can heal?
I believe it. I'm not a Pollyanna about this. I know the anger. I certainly felt it myself as my staff was crouched in a closet with nothing but a fork to protect them because we were running the debate on the Democratic side. I know it. But at the same time, there are people of goodwill on both parties that want to move forward and get things done. And if they listen to their constituents, they'll tell you that's all they want right now. They are sick and tired of watching the discontent, seeing people who are so angry, and they really just want to get the vaccine. They really just want to get back their job. They want to be able to send their kids to school again. And if Joe Biden takes that as his mission, it's real hard to say no to him. And I think that's what's just about to happen.
Senator Klobuchar, thanks for your time. Thanks for making the decision to go forward with this inauguration. As we watch the Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris, walk her way up West Executive Avenue with her family, with her husband, now the second gentleman of the United States, Doug Emhoff. Her great nieces, Rachel Scott. It looked like her grandniece there was practicing to one day walk up that avenue herself.
Yeah, and she actually suggested that once, right before the race was called, saying that she wanted to be an astronaut president. And Kamala Harris, the vice president, then told her that she could do that, but she has to wait until she's 35, until she's old enough. You know, this is the first time that this family has seen each other in months since the race was actually called. You have Doug Emhoff there, the second gentleman, but Harris said that while vice president would be great when she was running, she said Mamla is her favorite title. And that is what she is known as to their two kids, Cole and Ella. You see them there. This is a family that represents the diversity of America. It's a changing face in politics that we are seeing play out right here before us. And it is just remarkable. It's a remarkable image, both of them walking up there to the EOB, the White House, on the complex there. Harris says that she would like to keep her family dinners. She likes to spend some time around the dinner table on Sundays. They've been doing this via Zoom lately during the pandemic. That's one thing that she would like to keep as she moves into her role as vice president. But again, really reflecting the diversity of America, what we are seeing playing out right now. The first second gentleman our country has seen, and the first woman and woman of color to serve as vice president of the United States, marching up those steps right now, George.
Steps of the old executive office building. She'll have a large suite of offices there. Of course, she'll also have a smaller office in the West Wing, closer to the president. No doubt we'll spend hours and hours in the Oval Office with the President of the United States as well. Little nod of the head as it all soaks in. Now she gets to work as well. We'll be right back.
Did you know you can make more money selling on Walmart than on Amazon? Walmart has created a brand new marketplace that's driving millions of potential buyers to your products. And right now, the competition is super low.
The Edge, breakthrough storytelling from ABC News, National Geographic, ESPN, all designed differently for you to stream straight to any screen whenever you want, free. And imagine the most celebrated, epic live events and moments, all playing out right before your eyes.
See those flames behind me?
And go deeper inside the groundbreaking exclusives from the campaign trail only ABC News gets. Watch ABC News Live right now and anytime. Streaming on Roku, Hulu, Facebook, and abcnews.com.
ABC News Live. Streaming everywhere, right to you.
ABC News Live.
The Americans here on the ground and the Iraqis. 18,000 tons. Patatas. Ismail? David.
For Ground Zero from Hurricane Michael.
You can see just home after home.
David, good to meet you.
This was your view.
My favorite view.
Thank you very much.
Yes, mornings may look different these days, but where you start your day,
Where you spend your mornings, where you get connected to everything that's happening.
And face it, there's a whole lot happening in our world these days.
where you get all the breaking new information of the day to help you navigate through these times.
That's why we're here.
Good morning, sunshine.
And making sure you start your day off with a smile and some sunshine.
Good morning, America.
Good morning, America.
Good morning, America. Oh, how I love saying that.
Wake me up.
The world may feel out of your control, but your happiness doesn't have to be. Learn the secrets to happiness. Listen to the 10% Happier podcast, free on Apple Podcasts.
ABC News honored winner for the second straight year with the Edward R. Murrow Award for Overall Excellence in Television. ABC News, America's #1 news source.
This is GMA3, what you need to know. GMA3.
A third hour of Good Morning America in the afternoon.
It's all about you. Lunchtime on ABC.
What kind of music do you want to make this spring?
I want to make hits. Go get your respect.
And there you see the changing of the guard inside the White House. Those pictures already up all across the West Wing, inside the White House, now of President Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris, all replaced over the last several hours by the White House staff, because that is Joe Biden's White House right now. He is already at work signing executive orders after that shortened military parade, his inaugural address before a socially distanced crowd in Washington today. An inauguration unlike any other. And we are wrapping up now our third Wednesday with all of you here on this network. 2 Wednesdays ago, of course, that siege of the Capitol. Last Wednesday, the impeachment of President Trump, the only time that's happened in American history, a president impeached for the second time. 1 week later, the inauguration of Joe Biden. So many believing that this is a time now where the country is beginning, David Muir, to turn the page.
And George, I was most moved today, and there were so many moving moments, by the most personal of the moments. You know, we just saw in the last hour when President Biden arrived at the White House, a White House that he reported to duty for as vice president for 8 years, and so many years before that as a senator working with presidents in both parties. But when he arrived there today, and to see Dr. Jill Biden, our first lady, simply put her head on his chest, we have seen that kind of affection from the two of them for so many years. And it was almost as though, without saying it, she was saying, "You did it, Joe." And this is a life lesson that he has put on display for the American people in heartache, heartbreak, and a lot of hard work through the years as senator, as vice president, working across the aisle, genuinely caring about people and empathy, and through demonstrating what has happened to him in his own life with the loss of his first wife, his baby girl, and then his son much later in life. I think that was on full display in those final moments as they walked into the White House. And Senator Kamala Harris, now our vice president, making history for all of the obvious reasons: the first woman of color, the first black woman, the first woman of South Asian descent to serve as vice president. As she walked up those stairs, she'll live at the Naval Observatory a couple of miles away. But I won't forget what she told me before the election, which was Joe Biden is who she will follow, who she will emulate as vice president. We had mentioned this earlier today, but she said, "I'll be the last in the room," as he was for Barack Obama. And she said something else too, as it relates to the pandemic. But I think that this sums up how she'll tackle all of the issues at hand, really, for Joe Biden. And when he turns to her in those final moments to say, "What do you think?" When we were talking about the vaccines, it was almost as though she could predict that this is where we would be in the pandemic. She said, "We're going to need to figure out a way to get this vaccine out to people, and quickly." And she said, "We have to be equitable. There needs to be equity with these vaccines. We have to think about working families and people across this country and how they're living their lives, and to signal to them, we see you, we hear you." And that walk with her own family today, you know, for so many generations, and particularly the younger generations in this country, that image of what we saw just now, that is how they're living their lives. That does not look new. That does not look different. That looks like America on full display today.
So much history made in one afternoon.
And to see that image that you're talking about, representation matters, right? People were already experiencing that, but now to see it in this major way. Madam Vice President Kamala Harris, she said that her mother taught her to dream and to do. And certainly now she is doing both. And what she's about to do is swear in 3 new senators, each of them history-making, groundbreaking in their own right. John Ossoff will be the first Jewish senator out of Georgia, Raphael Warnock, the first black senator out of Georgia, and Alex Padilla, the first Latino in California. And I think that when we think about it, as you were making reference to where we were 2 weeks ago, where we were even a week ago, in the end, through it all, democracy proves more resilient.
The words of Joe Biden, democracy has prevailed in his inaugural address. We're going to go back to our regular programming right now. Coverage of the inaugural will continue on ABC News Live, and we'll be back at 6:30 with World News Tonight with David Muir, and of course at 8 p.m. for the inaugural celebration. Have a good afternoon.
And welcome to ABC News Live's continuing coverage of the inauguration of President Joseph R. Biden Jr. and Vice President Kamala D. Harris. I am Diane Macedo. Thanks for staying with us on this monumental day. Just a little while ago, President Biden sent his first tweet from the @POTUS account saying he will head right to the Oval Office to get to work on helping American families. Senior Washington reporter Devin Dwyer is here with us now for more. Devin, what's first on President Biden's agenda?
He has a big agenda, Diane, and it is getting underway right now. He's probably just settling in, getting his first look at the Oval Office after the Trumps moved out. We know this morning that Vice President, now President Biden, has a list of 15 executive actions that he plans to take this afternoon, dozens more over the next 10 days. These will touch everything from the pandemic to the recession to racial division in this country, climate change on the list. I took a look back, Diane, at the first day actions of all 4 of Joe Biden's predecessors. If he executes what is planned today, that will far exceed everything that the past 4 presidents combined have carried out. Biden aides tell me that is because of the enormity of the problems. We will see him impose that mask mandate on all Americans traveling on airlines. Right now, that's just a suggestion. For example, later this afternoon, it will become federal law. So many more there that you just saw on that list as well.
Bring in Kira Phillips, who's covered the Trump White House extensively. It looks like we just lost Kira. We'll come back to her in a little bit. But Devin, let's talk a little bit more about Biden and how he moves forward. You know, President Trump has this looming Senate trial ahead to decide whether or not they will convict him after he was impeached for a second time. We heard Biden on the campaign trail. He has an aggressive 100-day agenda. How will this impact him? How does he get so much done if the Senate is tied up in this trial?
Yeah, that is one of the big unanswered questions, Diane. And at this hour, we don't have a lot of clarity about how impeachment will proceed. You know, one of the things we've talked so much about today is how Joe Biden drove home that message of unity, bringing the nation together. We've heard from Republicans today really encouraged by that, Democrats encouraged by that. One of the first major tests will be this impeachment process. It could begin as soon as tomorrow. And already we know that that process is a divisive one. We know that is going to create some hurdles for President Biden. One reason why he's sort of tried to stay away from it, not lean into it. Of course, we didn't hear it mentioned today at all. In fact, we didn't hear Donald Trump's name mentioned by Joe Biden today at all. But once that process is triggered and we're told by Chuck Schumer, the Democratic leader, that it will happen, it's going to make things very complicated for this robust agenda that Joe Biden has. And Diane, they're going to have to figure out how they can hold both a trial and do things like confirm the president's cabinet. None of those confirmations have happened yet. There's a lot to be done. They haven't figured out how to do it.
Kira, I think we have you back now. We did not hear Biden mention President Trump's, former President Trump's name. We didn't hear President Trump in his final farewell address mention Biden's name either. He did speak again today before officially leaving the White House. Did he seem different from the president that you've covered for the past 4 years?
That's such a great question. Absolutely not. It was vintage Donald J. Trump. I kept thinking about the Frank Sinatra song. You know, President Trump former President Trump has always done it his way, and that's exactly what we saw today. He came in and he didn't even go by script. I remember being in so many of those events at the White House, and he's supposed to be reading from the prompter and give an eloquent speech that's been written by his speechwriters, and he always went off script, and that's what he did today, Diane. He was supposed to have a nice send-off. He was supposed to mention Biden. He was supposed to say some encouraging words about the new administration, and he didn't. He just said what he wanted to say. He talked about what he had done and wouldn't mention Biden's name. He didn't mention the inauguration. He, as you know, he completely snuffed the inauguration and didn't show up. The first time in 152 years that an outgoing president didn't show up to be a part of that transfer of power there on the Hill. And then here was something else that I found interesting. When he gave his farewell taped speech yesterday, and he talked about our movement is just getting going. And then today he said the same thing. He said, we are just getting going. We will be back in some type of form. It has you wondering what is next for Donald J. Trump. I don't think this is someone that is going to all of a sudden take off into the sunset. He may take off into Marine One there for the very last time, but this is not somebody that's just going to disappear from public eye. He has hopes and dreams, and he's committed to doing something. He does not like being out of the spotlight.
And Kira, in his final hours in office, he issued more than 100 pardons and commutations, even throwing in one more during the swearing-in ceremony today. What do we know about those?
That's right. It was like a Hail Mary pass. I was seeing Roger Staubach there in that famous moment where he just went, poof, here's just one more to throw another bomb at you. And it was Fox News's Janine Spiro, and he issued a pardon for her husband, her ex-husband, rather, Al Spiro, rather, who was involved in tax fraud. And then I was looking at this long list in the late night pardons and commutations that he made, and I wasn't surprised. Steve Bannon, his campaign chair, who was defrauding donors. I think we were expecting that probably was going to come through. Rappers like Lil Wayne and Kodak Black that were charged for weapons. Political operatives like Paul Erickson. Remember Paul Erickson? I remember interviewing him, talking to him. He was dating Maria Butina, the alleged Russian woman who was here spying and infiltrating political events and getting close to Donald Trump and reporting back to the Russians. That never proved true, but Paul Erickson was a big political operator and raising money for Donald Trump. I wasn't surprised that he granted him a pardon. And also big donors like RNC Finance Chair Elliot Brody, who was charged with conspiracy. So it is typical Donald J. Trump, Diane, and that is, don't forget me. Oh, and by the way, here's just one more thing I'm going to do to show that I have some power here.
He came in the way he wanted to, and he left his way as well. Devin Dwyer, Kira Phillips, thank you both. And one of the biggest questions of the next 4 years is not just what's next for Donald Trump, but also what's next for the Republican Party now that Donald Trump is out of office. Tara Setmeyer, former Republican Communications Director, now with the Lincoln Project, joins me now with more on that. Tara, you left the Republican Party after Donald Trump refused to concede the election, but you are still a conservative. So for someone who may not agree with Biden a lot on policy issues, how did you feel watching the inauguration today?
You know, I have to say that it was an emotional day for me, actually more emotional than I expected. I've never shed so many tears watching an inauguration in my adult life because it was a culmination of so many things. Those of us who were in the Never Trump movement have been going through this for 5 years, 5 long years of holding Trump accountable, pointing out the existential threat to this country. And unfortunately, a lot of what we predicted in and the mayhem he would inflict came to fruition. And today it ended with him leaving and ushering in of a new era. It felt like being a political hostage set free after 4 years of Donald Trump. So I have a lot of policy differences with Joe Biden. I have a concern about a couple of the executive orders today, but that doesn't matter. I'm actually looking forward to having boring policy fights once again and not worrying about, the president of the United States tweeting and, further violating constitutional norms and institutions. So it was a glorious day today. It was a collective sigh of relief, I think, for myself and many others. And I was really, really proud to see Kamala Harris inaugurated, make history, and Joe Biden gave the speech of his life.
Not every day you hear a political commentator talk about looking forward to politics being boring.
Right.
And that's Tara Biden. He definitely focused on a message of unity in his address today. Republican leaders also joined him in church this morning. How do you see the GOP working with the Biden administration moving forward?
Well, political creatures are going to do things in their own self-interest. There were some encouraging aspects that I saw because we need bipartisanship in this country to get anything done. But some of the egregious acts, some of the seditionist acts by members of the House and Senate are difficult to just sweep under the rug and act as though it didn't happen. I mean, we had a violent insurrection just 2 weeks ago at the very same Capitol where Joe Biden was sworn in today. Now, looking at Kevin McCarthy and Mitch McConnell and those guys, the leaders of the party trying to make their best effort to show a bipartisan front is good, but we'll see what happens. I think what happens during the impeachment trial will be an interesting indicator about how much the Republicans will actually work with Biden. It'll determine which direction the party wants to go in. But they really need to cast some of those partisan squabbles aside to make sure that the COVID-19 response and the economic hardships of the American people are addressed immediately. And senators like Josh Hawley, who acted so disgracefully, supporting that big lie of the election not being fair and helping to incite that seditionist act, holding up Biden's DHS secretary instead of having a fast track DHS nomination is just the type of political brinkmanship that we don't need right now. They need to go ahead and confirm Biden's cabinet and get this government back in order. Donald Trump left a hell of a mess in his wake.
All right, so we got the politics out of the way. Now, can we talk about how awesome Amanda Gorman was? Because your Twitter feed was like my inner monologue as we were watching her speak. What a moment.
Oh, Amanda Gorman was the MVP of the inauguration. It was the most riveting 6 minutes I think we've ever seen in modern inauguration history. That young woman is brilliant, and she blessed this country with that brilliance. I mean, you couldn't look away. I don't think people were just transfixed at her words, and so many. I hope that her words are used to break down and study in English classes moving forward. It was an absolute poetic brilliance and exactly what this country needed to hear. It felt like a big warm embrace of America, and I applaud her. She stole the show.
She sure did. Tara Setmeyer, it's always great to have you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And it has been a historic day in Washington, an inauguration unlike one we have ever seen. So for more on that, let's bring in Mark Updegrove, presidential historian and ABC News contributor. Mark, it was quite something today to see a sea of flags in a place of what is normally hundreds of thousands of people on the National Mall.
You're right. Usually you have literally millions of people on the mall. For Barack Obama's inauguration, which was record-setting, we had 2 million people on that mall. I was there. There was a feeling of great jubilance in the air. Today it was very different. And at the same time, Diane, there was a certain normalcy about it after the Trump presidency. The only thing that wasn't normal was maybe Lady Gaga's dress. But other than that, the tone, the civility, the feeling of renewal, all of that was there. And we've seen that with the exception of the Trump inauguration 4 years ago. Those are generally hallmarks of an inauguration, which we celebrate in our country quadrennially.
Now, you say there, it seemed on the normal side, but there were plenty of historic marks today, not only the pandemic and the absence of a crowd, but also, of course, we just saw our first woman, first Black American, first Asian American to be sworn in as vice president.
It's amazing when you consider the fact that she was born in 1964, the same year that Lyndon Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act, banning discrimination on the base of race and sex. And it is remarkable that all these years later, we would have Kamala Harris step up as our first Black vice president, our first woman vice president, taking the oath of office on a Bible belonged to by a Thurgood Marshall, the first African-American member of the Supreme Court appointed by Lyndon Johnson. And I'm actually thinking of Lyndon Johnson today for many reasons, Diane, not the least of which is Lyndon Johnson was known for getting things done. And with the exception of Joe Biden, probably had more experience coming into the presidency than anybody. Joe Biden has 36 years in the Senate chamber, 8 years in the vice presidency, more experience than any president we've ever had. And I think he has the ability, given the collegiality that he learned from the Senate and the relationships that he established while he was there and in the vice presidency, he has the ability to get things done for the American people.
Now, of course, missing in action today, President Trump was not in attendance, only the third president in history to miss his successor's inauguration. What do you think of that?
Well, it's going to be a black mark on his record in the same manner that challenging the election and inciting the siege on the Capitol is going to be a black. That's going to be how we remember Donald Trump, not only as a loser, having lost the election and lost his fight against democracy, but being a sore loser at the same time by not showing up to the inauguration. Fortunately, Diane, the other former presidents filled the void. You had George W. Bush there, along the only Republican in the group, along with Bill Clinton and Barack Obama, and that shows the continuity of government that we normally see on Inauguration Day.
Mark Updegrove, always great to have you. Thank you.
Good to see you, Darian. Thank you.
And security is still tight at the Capitol, but thankfully we have seen no major incidents today in Washington or across the country. Let's bring in former FBI Special Agent Brad Garrett with more on the security efforts. Brad, thankfully the day seems to have gone smoothly, but D.C. is like a fortress right now. There are fences and troops everywhere. How long before things can go back to normal on Capitol Hill?
So I see fencing and probably the National Guard there for a few more days. Eventually, I think by next week, the National Guard will disappear or be drastically reduced. I think some fencing will come down. But my sense, Diane, is that the concern about potentially another group of people attacking is still fairly high, at least in many people's minds. And so as a result, you're going to see more security, I think, around the Capitol than you have in months or years past. But it's going to be a time thing. I think the groups or individuals that have thought about doing something clearly believed that the Capitol, and rightly so, was just almost an impossible target. Maybe to a certain extent, some of the state capitals. Some of the intelligence might suggest that they're going to wait for security to go down, but we'll just have to see, because obviously law enforcement is driven by intelligence, by source information, by telephones, by social media traffic. And we'll have to see where it takes them as far as, will we have any future attacks? I think the belief is that we will, but I haven't seen anything that talks about it in a specific form.
And there's been a lot of focus on fringe conspiracy groups. How are those groups reacting to Biden's inauguration?
Oh, I mean, they're extremely upset. They basically believe that President Trump had their back, that he would make sure that they could continue to live a way that they wanted to live, as far as the Second Amendment, or as far as the ability to sort of do whatever they want to do in their communities. I mean, it's a fascinating thing to a certain extent when you look at the motivation of many people in these sort of right-wing extremist groups. Is kind of like they just want to lead life the way they want to lead it without the rules, I think, sort of the rest of us want to abide by and need to abide by. And it's if you look at the history of extremist groups from the Ku Klux Klan to others, you know, they have gone up in power, then they've gone down in power, and versions of them today obviously are up in power. So we're going to have to see, but it's going to take, I think, a fairly long period of time before you sort of see us go into more less reactive, less anger once President Trump is gone from weeks into months.
And now that the inauguration is over, what does law enforcement need to look out for going forward?
Well, they're really going to be driven by intelligence, as I mentioned earlier. Do they have information of an individual or a group going after a state capitol or going after a particular individual? Again, they've talked about going after, for example, the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. They had talked about going after Vice President Mike Pence. You know, are those threats still active out there? They're going to. So that's one of the things they'll obviously look at day in and day out. But I will tell you, one of the biggest concerns, which has always been a concern, are lone actors. So in other words, let's say somebody that's a real big Trump supporter decides on his or her own to launch some sort of attack. That becomes tricky because if you don't know about that individual and their discussions or planning of an attack, it's very difficult to get in front of it.
All right. Former FBI Special Agent Brad Garrett. Brad, thank you.
You're welcome.
And now I want to bring in former White House Chief Usher Angela Reed for more on what this all looks like from the inside. Angela, it's such a pleasure to have you. You have a really unique perspective on this. So what does Inauguration Day look like inside the White House? How does the changing of administrations actually work?
Diane, thank you so much for having me. So this particular day is an epic day. It's a very frenzied environment. We typically start the day off at around 4:30 in the morning when everyone arrives in, getting set for the start of the TikTok. And, you know, we have a plan. The plan has been in place for 12 to 18 months. And so by the time we get to moving day, which is today, we are pretty much ready and set. And so the team stands by. They typically wait for the president to make his final visit to the Oval Office. And that's where the transition begins, where the members of the residence team will move to the Oval to begin with, together with Park Service and Secret Service to make that transition to get the Oval Office ready. And meanwhile, we are standing by in the residence. Traditionally, there has been a tea for the president-elect and first lady, hosted by the president and first lady. This year, however, that was not the case. So this morning, I believe, was a real gift to the residence team because they got 2 additional hours to get the house prepared. So they go through, you know, very strict cleaning protocol of the entire private quarters and guest quarters on the 2nd and 3rd floors. And they have the opportunity to move out the former president's personal belongings and furniture. And they also simultaneously begin to move in the personal belongings of the president-elect, which at this point is now our new president and first lady.
It's quite a task, but it sounds like it's all a very well-oiled machine at this point. I'm curious, though, how has COVID changed the way the White House operates?
You know, I am not able to speculate on what changes may have taken place. What I can say is that we have always had a very strict cleaning protocol. And I am absolutely certain that that has only been ramped up and enhanced as a result of the virus. And I have no doubt that the team has managed to take care of the cleaning process in an extraordinary and safe fashion for welcoming the new President Biden and Dr. Jill Biden to the House today.
They're in good hands, it sounds like. And Angela, what's your advice to the Bidens as they get used to their new home?
One of the things that strikes me is that President Biden and Dr. Biden are very familiar with the team, with the staff at the residence. So I am of the opinion that they walked in today with receiving a very, very warm welcome, and that they are familiar with the butlers and some of the housekeepers, the ushers, the chefs for certain. I recall that during the Obama administration, at the end of every event that the then Vice President attended,